What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Knights here, bringing you another Mordhau guide video, and today we're going to be talking about the best swords in Mordhau and what is the best sword in the game, if there is a best sword. And it's not just the best sword because there are multiple factors, one being the cost of that weapon along with many other factors, but cost is fairly important. So today I've come up with a formula that will help us solve what the best weapon is for the value with how good it is taken into account. So it's kind of a balance between how good it is versus how much it costs, and the final number should be a reflection of how worth it is and how strong it is even after the point reduction from how much it costs. So the equation I've formulated is the total sword damage against leg, torso, and head, and both stab and drag damage formats, and this will be done against heavy armored targets to give us the most accurate numbers. So you combine all 6 of those numbers and add that to the sword length, and then that will be subtracted by the wind up, which is the sword speed. So the faster the sword is, the less milliseconds there will be, meaning it will subtract less points from the total score. So the faster the weapon, the less will be subtracted. So the wind up, for example, would be something in the ballpark of 600 milliseconds. So in order to scale it properly and not have it play too large of a role in this equation, it will be divided by 10, and this will be done equally across all weapons. So that would result in 60 points being subtracted. And same with the point cost, we're going to scale it up. So for example, a 10-point sword will be multiplied by 20, giving us a 200-point deduction. And I've used this number because I've found it to scale as accurately as possible across all weapons and play a proper role in this determination of the strongest sword. So here's an example to help you guys understand what I'm talking about. So on the left hand side here, you can see the combined drag stab damage to the legs, chest, and head, and this is for the executioner's sword, but just know that this formula will be used the same for all the different swords that I am comparing. And this is done against level 3 armor because a lot of these weapons will be able to one-shot level 0 or level 1 armored targets, which will display the number of 100 damage, which is less accurate than the damage against max armored targets. So this will help us understand the collective damage. So that number is 205. And next we're going to take the sword length. Now some say length isn't everything, it's how you use it. But in all seriousness, guys, length is an important factor when regarding Mordhau, and it does enable you to engage multiple targets at once at a further distance. So it does benefit the longer weapons, but for example, something like the executioner sword, which is 110 length, versus something like the longsword, which is only 100 length, it's only a 10-point benefit to the executioner's sword, so it's not a massive factor, but it is absolutely something that needs to be taken into consideration. Same with the wind up, which is your general speed of each strike, and I have divided all of these numbers by 10 to make it so they don't play quite as large of a factor in this end result. So in this example, it's deducted by 62.5, but once again, if another sword is 500 milliseconds, it will be deducted by 50. So again, only a 10 to 15 point differential between all these weapons. It is an important factor, but it's not going to make or break the overall score. And finally, we have the weapon cost multiplied by 20 deducted from that overall score. Now you might ask, why is it multiplied by 20? So for example, a longsword, which would be a 5-point cost, versus the Zweihander, which is a 10-point cost, that is only a 5-point differential, and that is nowhere near enough of a factor as how important it really is in this game. So that's why it is scaled by 20, because I found the number 20 to be an accurate multiplier of this score to play an accurate role in the final result. So taking a look at how these weapons stack up against each other, I want to also quickly mention that this is not the final score, and the reason for this is that there's a couple of X factors that I would like to introduce to this equation, and that is the ability to do things that other swords can't do. Now, these are the sword stats on paper, but there are also factors that change weapons in practice as opposed to what their stats just read out. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be adjusting the scores because there are a couple of other important factors that I have not included yet. But as you can see, the longsword and greatsword are performing quite well, and I think this is due to their ability to have high stab and drag damage, and they're also not that point costly, so keep that in mind. Weapons score better on paper if they're more well-rounded, whereas weapons like the E-Stock and Executioner's Sword at the moment are not at the top of the list, and I think this is due to the E-Stock having very bad drag damage and the Executioners having very bad stab damage. So let's take a look at X Factor number 1. X Factor number 1 is the weapon with whatever the best drag damage collectively is, divided by the weapon point cost, added to the old score, which will give us the new score. Same with the stab damage, divided by the weapon point cost, added to the previous score, giving us the new score. So the top two weapons in this category are the Executioner's Sword for the drag damage and the Zweihander for the stab damage. Now, if you're wondering what 155 is, this is the collective drag damage against level 3 targets to their legs, torso, and head. And the 129 for the Zweihander is the collective stab damage to the legs, torso, and head. Now, again, it is divided by the weapon point cost, so in this case, for the dragging winner X Factor, the Executioner's Sword, it will be divided by 7, and the Zweihander will be divided by 10. Now, this will be added to our previous score, giving us our new score of 134.6 and 134.9. Now, I'm not done yet with the X factors because there's a few other important factors. Now, I've decided to add an additional 5 points to whatever weapon is able to one-shot targets with lower armor builds. So targets with full health but low-ish armor, either no armor or level 1 armor. What weapons have the ability to one-shot targets in different scenarios at full health? So again, an additional 5 points will be added for that ability. So starting off, we have the longsword. Now, the longsword is gathering an additional 5 points because it's able to one-shot drag headshot targets with no armor. And this is understandable because it's only a 5-point sword. Same with the Messer, it is gathering an additional 5 points for its ability to one-shot headshot drag zero armored targets. Fairly notable given that they are only 5-point weapons. It's nice to have weapons that can one-shot no helmets, like archers and things like that. As you can see, the E-Stock only has the ability to one-shot stab no armored targets to the head. This is semi-disappointing because it is a higher point cost weapon than those other two, and it doesn't rack in any bonus points. The Greatsword, on the other hand, gets an additional 10 points because it's able to drag and stab headshot no armored targets. The Executioner's Sword has the ability to one-shot all targets with no armored into the dragging format on top of a headshot drag against level 1 helmet. So this is amazing. It gets an additional 20 points for that. The Zweihander has the ability to drag and stab headshot level 0 targets at full health and kill them, giving it an additional 10 points. So racking in our total score, at the top of the list we have the Executioner's Sword and Greatsword. Next, lower down the list, we have the Zweihander and Longsword. And finally, we have the Messer and E-Stock. Now, keep in mind, this is not the exact best sword in the game. This is the best sword for the cost of points. So if you have the ability to stack armor and other valuable perks, check out the Executioner's Sword and Greatsword.
And also keep in mind that the Zweihander and longsword are very much so worth it for how much they cost. Along with the Messer, it's definitely got its place in the game. And finally, the E-Stock. It does struggle. I can't say it needs a massive buff of any kind. It has its place in the game. It's also the only sword that it's able to javelin people while on horseback, so I guess I could add an additional 5 or 10 points for that ability, but it's kind of a niche ability and it's not adding a ton of value to the overall sword combat. So I hope you guys really enjoyed that video, and if you haven't already, don't forget to drop me a sub down below. It really helps out the channel. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, like comparing various pole arm weapons or axes in the game, I will happily put that together for you guys. But just let me know down in the comments if you like this video or not, and if you have any ideas how to improve this equation to make it even more accurate. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Peace.